Welcome back, Tigers! This is the first video of our Campaign Influence Custom Model Campaign Attribution series. We will learn how to create campaign influence records for a First Touch Campaign Attribution model. The flows we create in this video will be used for our other custom models, allowing you to use the same flows for more than one model. We are breaking part 1 on First Touch Attribution into 2 parts. If you haven't watched our 2 other intro videos on campaign influence, we highly recommend you watch those first. Links are in the description below. Those videos cover the basics and give you a solid foundation of how campaign influence works. Let's hop over to Salesforce and see how to configure these flows. All right, here we are in Salesforce and we're ready to start building our flows that we need for campaign influence. So we're going to create flows that will create records for our First Touch model. We're going to go to Flows and then we'll click New Flow. Our first flow is going to be a record triggered flow on the opportunity contact role object. So we want this flow to fire whenever an opportunity contact role record is created. And then we're going to do a get right here. And we're going to get the contact's campaign member records. So our object here will be campaign member. And then the criteria I want to look for are my contact ID equals the contact ID of the opportunity contact role record. Another set of criteria is has responded equal to true. So this is how you're going to get the campaign member records that represent an engagement. And if you don't know what this means, check out one of our Mastering Campaigns Best Practices setup videos that refers you to how to set up your campaign member statuses so that they're standardized, so that you can use the responded checkbox to identify an engagement across your different campaign types without having to specify the different statuses in your criteria. It just makes things a lot easier. Now, the third thing I'm going to put in here is my created date of my campaign member record needs to be greater than or equal to a certain date. So in our org, what we want to look for is only the campaign history that goes back 180 days. Now, you may have a longer sales cycle and you may want to go back to 365. You may want to go back even further, or it may even be shorter. So this is completely up to you and based on the criteria of your business. Now, we need a formula field here that's going to help us find 180 days prior to the opportunity created date, because we only want to go back and find the campaigns which the contact was associated with 180 days prior to the created date or more. So anything that happened 180 days prior to the op created date and into the future until the opportunity is closed, we want to consider for campaign influence. So I need a formula field here. So you're going to go to your opportunity contact role object. And you're going to create a new formula field. Just create new, click formula, and you can call it whatever you want, 180 days prior to op created date, 360, whatever that is. And this is going to be a date field. Okay, and then the formula you're going to use, if you want to do 180 days, you'll do date value and then the opportunity created date field minus 180. If you want to go back 360 days, that's what you do there. Make sure you put a really nice description. So this field is used in a flow to query the campaign members with a created date of greater than 180 days prior to the op created date. So I'm not going to save this because I already have this field created right here. And we can see my formula is 180 days. Now, you'll have to save and refresh your flow so that you can see that new field. And here's my field right here. So this is going to bring back all of my campaign history for this particular contact, going back 180 days prior to the op created date. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to call this flow created campaign influence automation. All right, now we want to put a decision element here because we only want to do something if this collection has any records. Oh, and let's make sure we made it say all records. There we go. All right, so a decision here. So campaign members exist. So we'll look for this collection to not be null. Okay, so if campaign members do exist, we want to do a query to get all of our active campaign influence models, because this flow is not just going to be for First Touch models, it's going to be for all of our custom models that we set up. So this is going to be called Get Campaign Influence Models. And we only want it to pull the models that are active. And then we only want to pull the custom models that we've set up. So we're going to look for model type equals 2. Now you might be saying, where the heck did you get the 2? And if you check out the campaign influence model API documentation from Salesforce, you'll see down here in the model type field, 2 means it's a custom model. Now 3, first touch model, last touch model, even distribution model, this is for Pardot or account engagement orgs. So we're in an org where we're not using Pardot, so we do not have these types of models in our org. We only have number 1 and number 2. So we're going to look for model type equals 2. Now we're going to loop our custom models. I didn't make it pull all records. I always forget that. All right, there we go. Okay, then we'll save that. Now we want to add a decision element. And this is going to look for which type of model. So this first one will be First Touch. And I'm going to go to my loop and I'm going to pull the developer name and I'm going to say first_touch here. We'll save that. Now I'm going to do a sort here, collection sort. And I'm going to sort my campaign members ascending. And I want them to be ascending by created date, because I want to pull the first campaign that the contact is associated with. Then I'm going to loop my campaign members . Okay, our next step is I'm going to add a counter here. So we'll do an assignment. And I'm going to have a counter that's going to count the records that are coming into here. So basically I need to count the collection, assign a 1 to the first record, and then when it's in a first touch model, I don't want any other records to come in here. So you have to assign a counter because we're going to add a last touch model on here later. And We can't set the maximum number of items to this collection to be 1, because when this routes from the first touch and then to the last touch, this collection has already been sorted and it only has 1 record in it, and you won't be able to get your campaigns for your last touch attribution model in here. So you may be asking, why are you doing a counter? You can just limit the collection sort here and all that. There's a really good reason why that you'll find out in the next video. So just add the counter and trust me. All right, so we'll go back to our assignment, and we're going to create a variable here called var counter. This is going to be a number. Our default value will be a 0. It doesn't need any decimal places. And we will add 1. Now we're going to add a decision element. And this decision is going to check to see if the counter equals 1. Put a no here. So if the counter equals 1, then it's going to go into an assignment where we assign the campaign influence fields. So first we need to create a variable that's going to hold our campaign influence record while we assign the fields to it, so that we can then add it to a collection and create the records. So this is going to be a data type of record, and it's going to be a campaign influence object. Okay, so the first field that we need to assign here is our opportunity ID. And that is coming directly from the opportunity contact role record. Then our next field is our contact ID, and that is also coming from our opportunity contact role record. Our next field is the model ID, and this is coming from our loop, our first loop, because we're a loop within a loop right now. And we want the ID of the record right here. And then our last field is the campaign influence campaign ID. And that is going to come from the loop of the campaign member. Okay, we'll save that. Now we're going to add this to a collection. I know you can put it in the same assignment, but you know what? I'm really tired of having to delete the last thing in the assignment. I don't know if that happens to you. If you add your collection down here and then you need to add another field and you have to remove it. I used to consolidate these 2 assignments into one, and I've since stopped because it makes me go rawr. All right, so we're going to collect the campaign influence records. So we're creating a variable that's a collection variable that's going to allow multiple records to come into it, so we can collect all these records and create them all at once outside of the loop. All right, so we're going to add our campaign influence record here. And we'll hit save there. Okay, so what we have going on here, let's zoom out a little bit, is we're going to have loop through our campaign influence models. It's going to look for first touch. It's going to loop through all of our campaign members, and then it's sorting our campaign members so we get the oldest one to get the first touch. Then we're only going to create a campaign influence record for our first record because we're using a counter to assign that there. So here, let me name this correctly. I don't like those defaults in there either. I don't know how you feel about that. I'd rather type it in and have it be blank, but all right, so we're gonna add that to the collection there, and then we should be all set. Now we're going to come outside of the loop here, which is after the last one, which is right here. And we're going to create our campaign influence records. We'll set this to multiple, and then we'll do our collect campaign influence records record collection that we created. And we'll click save there. And then we will activate this and we are ready to test. Now, before we test, let's go ahead and check out our model settings. So our First Touch model is active and it's actually the default model. So that means that whenever a campaign influence record is created for this model, we should see these records from the campaign influence related list on the opportunity. So let's go ahead and check that out. So I have an opportunity here. I already have a contact role, so nothing's going to happen on your existing records. If you need to run an update on your existing records, that is something that you're going to have to do using Data Loader. So to trigger our flow that we just created, I need to delete this contact role and re-add Danny. So I'm going to delete Danny, and then I will add Danny back. And then cool, I see a campaign influence record is created. Now we have to figure out if it's the right one, right? So we can see over here, the model name is First Touch. So that's awesome. But let's go ahead and go to Danny's campaign history and let's make sure that we've got the oldest campaign that's 180 days prior to the opportunity created date. So we are using the campaign member first associated date is the exact same thing as a campaign member created date. There's no difference between those two fields. Now we can see here that the oldest, if we sort these records here, we can see the oldest is 5/22/2023, but that's way before the opportunity created date. Our op created date here is 1/10/2024. So that one would never be counted. So it was correct that it did not pull this one. Then our next one is 4/19/2024, and that is after the op created date. So that is absolutely correct. And that is the oldest one that's within our time period that we're looking for. So this worked perfectly. So it's easier to test on a contact that has less campaigns, but you definitely want to make sure that the contact has multiple campaigns that are spanning the time frame that you're looking for, and the op has a created date that isn't the most recent. So if you need to create a record using Data Loader so you can set the created date, that might be helpful for you. That's what we did here. All right, now let me add another contact role and let me see what happens. So I've got Bryn. Okay, and so I have another campaign influence record that was created here. So how we've set up our First Touch campaign attribution is we're going to see one record per contact for our First Touch model in campaign influence related to our opportunities. You may not want this. You may only want one campaign, but I think you should probably use one record, one campaign per contact, and not just have one of these contacts count, because I wouldn't know how you choose which one, maybe based on the role. It's up to you. You're creating these records using flow, so you can do whatever you want in the criteria. Now, our next flow that we need to create is going to be on the opportunity contact role object as well, but it's going to fire when the record is deleted. So we'll choose a new flow and we'll go to record triggered flow. Our object is going to be opportunity contact role. We'll choose when the record is deleted. And then what we're going to do is we'll get all of the campaign influence records related to this opportunity contact role. We're going to select the campaign influence object, and then we're going to look for a match on contact ID and opportunity ID. So we'll look for contact ID to match the contact ID of the op contact role, and we'll look for the opportunity match there as well. We'll select all records. Then we're going to add a decision element here. And we're going to check to see if campaign influence records exist in that collection. If we don't check to see if records exist, then this flow will fail if there's none. So we'll look for this to not be null. Okay. Then if records do exist, we're going to run a delete, and we're just going to delete those. That's it. We'll save that. All right, we'll name this opportunity contact role deleted master flow because you can add other actions to this. We had no entry criteria. All right, activate this. All right, now let's test it. So we've got 2 contact roles and 2 campaign influence records. So if I delete Danny, I would expect the associated campaign influence record to also be deleted. Beautiful. So we see this one for Bryn only. So if we delete Bryn, then we can see the campaign influence record is also deleted. So we're all set there. That's it. That's a wrap. Be sure to subscribe to Blu Tiger Academy so you don't miss out on the next video we are working on that will show you how to complete the flows needed for First Touch Campaign Attribution. The video will be called Part 1B. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions or if you'd like to see a video on a different Salesforce topic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.